Very good. So we have someone here who wasn't at the stage before.
Yeah.
So Benny, welcome to the stage. Please introduce yourself. Who are you and why are you here?
First of all, thank you, Sarah. Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to discuss at this panel today. You will ask yourself, who am I? My name is Benny, as Sarah already mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of ABL. What is ABL doing? To put it in a nutshell, we are developing smart city projects and public transportation projects all across Europe and also in North America. On top of that, we have created a really innovative and unique platform behind the whole system, which allows our customers on the one side to monetize Wi-Fi infrastructures by implementing third-party advertisement. And also, we are creating a real value regarding the whole big data topic. This is what I'm doing, and thank you again for having me.
Yeah, we're glad that you're here, and I want to know something about you more personal. So first of all, some personal questions to you. Claire, the first thing you do in the morning is?
With the coffee, it's unfortunately checking Slack.
Oh, right. You use Slack with the company.
Yes, I feel like I should have a much healthier version of that. But in reality, it's, because our team is spread across a lot of time zones, and we have a team in Asia who are basically spectacular. So it's actually one of the loveliest ways to start the day, because I basically get to see what our team in Asia have been doing.
So you check Slack while you're doing yoga. How many days did you live without your phone in the last 3 years?
I had a 2-week trip to the remote Australian desert recently where there was absolutely no communication except for an emergency beacon. It was a revelation to think that we all used to live like that. Sadly, it took about 48 hours for the stress levels to ramp back up once I hit civilization. But it was
it was like that in the first time, or?
It was fantastic living without, but coming back, academic life, we're totally enslaved to email nowadays.
All right, Tami, Nintendo, Tamagotchi, Game Boy, what was your favorite digital toy?
I think that's probably Tamagotchi because of the idea of maybe taking care of it. But I would say that Tamagotchi. I would love to know how we are going to move forward to mobility and use Tamagotchi on it as well afterwards.
It's just to introduce you a little bit more personal. So we want to know you as a person. So that's why I'm asking all these questions. Next one. What was your childhood dream in case of a job?
In case of what, please?
Of a job. What do you want to be as a child?
Very classic. I wanted to be an astronaut. Yeah. So
you screwed it up, huh?
Somehow, no, I'm a Deutsche Bahn, and, no moon in sight, but still it has something to do with mobility. It has to work for now.
Yeah, we're very happy that you're here on Earth and in this panel with us. So last question, what is your favorite Netflix series?
This is a good question because, to be honest, I'm not watching series. I don't have time for that.
All right, let's say books. Do you read books?
Yeah, sometimes. I read a pretty crazy book the last time when I went to vacation in Thailand. It was about the craziest prison in Thailand, so it has nothing to do with digitalization or something like that.
No conclusion out of that. All right, so let's start with the panel. I said nothing in Word comes for free. If we have the connected, smart, and low-emission city as a profit, what is the price we have to pay it, and who has to pay it? Claire?
I think I might slightly disagree with the premise. So, although, yes, often there's an upside and a downside, I think technology can really create upside if it's used responsibly, if it's used ethically. And I think the fact that we have technology now that can dramatically increase people's quality of life very, very quickly, it means there isn't always a downside. Of course, sometimes there is if people are using it poorly, but I think we're in a space now where you can innovate incredibly quickly. And I mean, working in a company where I think all of us deeply care about the technology that we're making and being used to do good in the world, I think it is something you have to be aware of and think about. But I do think it's very possible for technology to create kind of relatively clear-cut positivity in the world.
All right, very positive statement. So are there any other opinions about that?
I'm happy to go negative here. So, I mean, one of the things that people need to be thinking about is these are enormously powerful surveillance technologies. The moment we pick up our phones now, we're tracked every second, every piece of movement through space, and that's only going to become worse with smart cities. A combination of facial recognition, mobile phones, new address systems is going to allow governments and corporations to gather an enormous amount of data on you, and they're not always going to use that in ways that benefit you.
So let's talk about the challenges we have to face if we transform our cities to smart cities. What do you think? What challenges do we have to face?
Yeah, I think that we need to consider what are the pros and cons when it comes to smart cities as well. If we consider the use of data to offer better service in general, it's really positive for citizens, right? But at the same time, if it's not used in the right way, of course, you can affect people's, life in general by, I don't know, maybe crossing the line of privacy and maybe using the data in a way that might affect their own way of living and thinking, I think. I think that we need to respect the line to try to keep the privacy and use data for better service in general, not just mobility, but in general.
Is a smart city possible in Germany? I mean, we have such strict laws in case of data security. Is smart cities for the rest of the world, but not for Germany?
Well, good question.
Please say no. There are a lot of people now sitting here and hoping they say no.
Well, a smart city definitely is possible because whenever there's a big desire from society, it somehow has to be possible to change it. Smart cities will make life much easier and will decrease pollution, will save time. So it has so many positive aspects that somehow society has to find a way, protect data, but still to enable process, because it will happen in the rest of the world, and we have to make sure that we somehow keep our pace.
Hopefully it's not just happening, hopefully we shape it. What is a cue for you, Benny? We were talking outside about the cities and the plans from the cities. What do you say? Who is the preventer in all this development? Is it more like the suppliers, the OEMs, the politics? Who is it?
From my perspective, it's the it's the political part. I mean, for example, that's why it's a kind of a home run for me today. We developed the Smart City project of Berlin. It started in 2015. We had our second rollout in the last year. And from my side, from my perspective, the political part has to improve such projects.
You're agreeing?
Well, I think one of the amazing things for us has been when you've got environments in which innovation is encouraged at a political level, it makes a big difference. Actually, the UK has been a great example of this in the past. And they're very good at basically investing in innovation and providing things like support for angel investors who want to invest in early stage companies. And I think when you've got a sympathetic political environment which believes that innovation doesn't just happen in big corporates and big government, it can happen in other places, I think it can be really powerful.
So are there any cities who are doing a very good job? You're in a city and said, oh, this is kind of smart and it's working today, not we're talking about future concepts, it's really working today, you can use it. Tell me.
I think that Helsinki has been doing a good job. I think that, in general, it depends a lot on the type of service that we are talking about. I cannot see a city that is 100% complete in all segments, but definitely when it comes to mobility, for example, Helsinki has been trying to implement a lot of new mobility service and, yeah, has been having good results, I would say.
All right. Speaking about good questions. If you have some questions, you can use our tool Slido, and I'm just asking the most voted questions. So if you're too lazy to write an own one, or you think, oh, this is a good one, just give it a thumbs up, and then I'm going to ask at the end of the session your questions or the most voted questions. So I think we have some here already. We can have a look. So if you want to share, you have a QR code on your badge. You can join the conversation. Yes, I think we have some. All right, Robert, is it kind of a problem that a lot of cities have good concepts, but not the right way, that they didn't found the way to implement their strategies, and they have kind of problems with realization of their concepts?
I mean, clearly that is a problem. Transport's very path dependent, and it's also requires central planning at some level. You know, the sorts of infrastructure investments you need to make to roll out big mass transport systems, that's a multi-year, you know, sometimes decadal project. People get it wrong sometimes, but it has to be done as well too. I mean, if we just leave the infrastructure of the city intact and try to fit all the mobility solutions around that, that will be a much worse outcome than realizing some of the other more exciting benefits that may involve some pretty hefty social change in infrastructure.
I compare it every time with doing some sports. If you want to do some sports and you lose some weight, you can say, yeah, just start, move, just do it. But if we're talking about transformation of a city, of a whole city, which is a real ecosystem, what are basically really the first steps? How can they start? I think they often have the problem to start with it.
Well, one thing I'd like to see is more community involvement in defining what the problems are. We've seen some very different perspectives on what the problem is and the solutions. You know, should we be going up or down?
We all know the problem. We don't have a clue about the solution. We know the problem very well.
Sometimes if you talk to people, what they think the problem is isn't what the providers think the problem is. I saw a fantastic, I do lots of work on robotics. I saw a fantastic presentation the other day where a woman, an engineer, said, we spent a year trying to work out what people needed a robot with an arm for in their house. And at the end of a year, they said there was nothing. There was nothing that having spent a year trying to work out what you could do with this thing that they'd built, they discovered that it had there was no sort of product where that was actually that was not going to sell. And maybe if you'd started the process and gone to people and said, look, what are the problems for you? What kind of world are you looking for? We wouldn't see so many false starts. We wouldn't see so many people developing really cool gear, which was great, and then discovering that the job is to convince the public that they need to use it.
So, Tammy, do you think that customer centricity is just a buzzword?
Sorry?
Do you think that customer centricity is just a buzzword and not really something the companies really take care of it?
I'm not sure, actually. I think that, yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, all the companies are saying we have to develop our products with a customer centricity. We have to look at the customers and their needs. Yes. Do you think it's just a buzzword and which they use, or do you think they really act and work like that?
Yes. So I think that there are a lot of companies putting a lot of efforts on this, and when it comes to the automotive industry, for example. I mean, there are a lot of, if you think about Renault, for example, they have a department that is exclusively trying to understand what is actually, how can they improve actually the service, what is the UX development that they can actually integrate in their own platform. So I think that they are definitely investing time and money on it, but it is, yeah, I mean, it's mandatory. If we don't understand what the customers need, it's impossible for you to offer the right service or the right product by the end, right? So I think that they are investing, and yeah, it's...
Can I just a little footnote to that? People keep saying the customer, but one of the questions I'd like to ask is, what do citizens want? And that's a different question. And the options matter here, because if you say, look, here's your choice, do you want the red one or the blue one, you'll get an answer. But if you say, do you want not one of these at all, you'll get a different answer. So framing here is really important. And part of the framing is, do we think about our relationship to the future as one where we're all customers and people come and offer us great services? Or do we think of ourselves as citizens who are trying to build smart cities as a community? And I think that would get you actually some interestingly different outcomes.
Yeah, of course, especially when we think about forward-looking concepts like autonomous driving. For example, children will be customers. So what do they want? They don't want to sit in a car and drive the roads. They want to be under the sea or something like that. So you have to change the, you have to change the window or something like that. I want to make a quick round here for everyone, the same question. Starting with Benny, what do you think we have to give up radically to change and shape the future right?
This is a good question. I mean, at the end, I think we have to find a mixture between building up, for example, smart environments, creating values. But on the other side, I think we also have a kind of, how can I say, we don't have to forget the social part in the whole story, because digitalization, and from my perspective, also means that, for example, a lot of people will lose their job because of the digitalization. This is the other part, and I think we have to find the right way to move forward with the digitalization. Especially, I mean, when I'm saying this, you know, it's my business to develop such projects and to offer, digital solutions. But for the future, I think we have to find the right mixture.
Well, tough one. I would have to say...
That's my job here. Otherwise, I have to go.
I would probably say we should get rid of the fear of change. This is something I'm seeing a lot when talking to cities. I recently spoke to the head of digitalization of a relatively big German city about smart mobility, new ideas, next steps, how to develop ideas together. And at the end, I said if it would make sense to meet her team, make a workshop, and make a deep dive. And she said, "There's no team, it's me." So there was one single person who is doing the digitization and smart city initiative for a relatively big German city. I found that very scary because obviously not everybody has really understood that there's a big chance and that city really have to act. And still, when we meet mayors or so from other cities, there is a certain appetite for cool stuff and future-like innovations. However, we always see the question, what does it cost? What about the money, and what is the return? And I'd say at the moment we are in a phase where what about the cost is not the right question, but it's what about the impact on society and the people who live in the city.
So redefining the KPI.
Somehow.
All right, Tammy, what do we have to give up?
Yeah, I think that we should definitely start to find a way to connect the operators, software providers, cities. I think that the problem right now is to communicate and find a way to have regulations that can adapt to the mobility service that we are currently offering. And by the time that we connect and identify what is best for the citizens, then it's definitely going to be better for everyone.
All right, Robert.
I think we need to give up on greenhouse gas emissions, and that means probably economic growth. I mean, seriously, that's the challenge, isn't it? We're facing planetary catastrophe, and we're building more stuff. And at some level, the negative emission stuff is often just magic. People are putting, a lot of weight on the idea that we're going to somehow suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And if that goes belly up, we are in real trouble. And it just seems to me we're going to confront a hard limit. We can't emit anymore. And taking that seriously is way more radical than I think most people have recognised. So, and that's, it's part of the mobility story. It's part of the social choices we face more generally. I don't like saying that because it's a pretty miserable thought. But people who think that we can have business continuing economic growth in every society around the world, that's cloud cuckoo land nowadays. Those people are the dreamers. Okay, the realists are the people who are saying, look, we've just got to do anything else that doesn't involve setting fire to our children's future.
4 different answers, so Claire, it's up to you now. Big challenge at the end of the row.
Well, I think certainly there's a lot there of stuff that we have to give up. I think also a thing which I think will help us is a little bit less of this Western-centric view of designing technology. I think partly because of where the capital is, but if you think about stuff that's getting designed in Silicon Valley, for example, and then you look at cities, and the cities where you can have the biggest impact are not cities in California. They're cities in emerging markets. And I think one of the things that we have is with this idea that technology is created there and exported around the world, and actually the stuff you can learn from cities like Delhi, where they've been moving a huge complex web of people and things for a very long time in informal and formal ways. And I think there's a lot that we can be learning if we look out a bit more and don't always design something in the West and then export it out. I think we should be looking at how we can draw on what people have learned in other parts of the world.
Well, thank you so much. That was really diverse answers. Very good. So we start quickly now in our Q&A session. And the first question is, I think it's for you, Claire. You can try to answer it, but I think it's for Claire. Concerning addressing locations, how will a machine be able to understand the difference between, I think you have to read that, I show it to you, between whole pan pet or whole pan pat?
Yes, excellent question.
You see, I spell it the same way.
I like this question.
Yeah.
Yes, very good question, because you let me show off about our algorithm. So thank you. Basically, so the question was about the word whole spelt H-O-L-E and whole spelt W-H-O-L-E.
Yeah, I think you can see it in the back.
You can see it somewhere there.
Maybe.
But basically, yes, so there are 2 things we do. So the first thing is when we made the list of words, and this is across every language, so each language is totally designed from scratch, and when we made the list of words, we took out words like whole and whole, or here and here, words that sound the same. We actually also took out words that Americans spell differently, so color and color, that they're not in the list. So anything that could cause confusion, because homophones pairs, for example, are taken out. And then the other thing we do is we basically assume that people are going to make mistakes, because we're human, that's what we do. So we put similar combinations really far away from each other. So toffee branched pyramid is in the UK, and coffee branched pyramid is in India. And therefore, if I make a mistake, I mishear you, my machine mishears me, I make a typing error, it instantly fixes the mistake.
Very smart. All right. I hope this is quite answered here. So I mark it. Yes, Mark is answered. Here, next question is, today's keynote speaker spoke about the future of mobility and sustainability in the automotive sector. Are there similar developments in the aviation sector? I don't know if someone can answer that. I have a look around and I say we just served that question for later and go on to the next one, which is really cool. Maybe we can discuss that one a little bit more. Are costs for infrastructures and public services bound to the move from public money, taxes, to consumer fees?
Bound to is probably too strong.
Shifted.
So much of these new business models are premised on not giving back to society in some ways. That you would worry about tax base, I think.
But I think one of the interesting things, so everybody did tease Elon Musk a while ago when he talked about this amazing idea of a vehicle that could stop at different places and people could all get on and essentially design the bus. But and actually one of the interesting things that we've seen lately in places like the US where for example, somebody designed an app which was basically a library. So you could go and borrow a book and then give it back. And I think one of the interesting things we just need to be careful of is not this idea that technology can do everything, and that some things that governments have done should just be outsourced to technology. And I think there's a really important line you have to tread, which is technology does fantastic things. And I'm a huge proponent of using tech for good, but I do think you have to be careful.
So you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, all right. So we go to our last quick round, because at the end I always wanted to know if you agree or not agree with my sentences. I read out some lines. It's called Fake or Future, and you sign with your thumbs up or thumb downs if you agree or not agree. First of all, there will be never such a thing as smart villages.
Damn.
All right, that gives hope. I'm from a very, very small village, 1,000 inhabitants. Mindset is the biggest preventer, not technology, for shaping the future.
That's a false dichotomy if ever there was.
You're not allowed to use both ends.
Middle.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Most of the cities will be smart cities in 2030.
No.
Oh, Robert, I counted on you. All right.
What they say.
So, and the very last question for all of you is, the title was, can smart cities save us? My question is, save us from what?
Well, as a father of a 6-year-old, I would be super grateful if smart cities can save me for wasting time. For example, when I now have to bring him to elementary school, last year it was kindergarten, most of the time we use bikes, and that works well because we live downtown. Whenever it rains, the little one is not so happy about using the bikes, and we go with public transport. And it's unfortunately it's a very painful ride because we have to switch lanes 2 times, and it's taken forever for a probably 4-kilometer way. So this has to become smarter. It's not an option for me to ride 25 minutes for 4 kilometers and switch public transport twice. So I would really hope that in the future we will use technologies, new ideas, transport modes to make mobility smarter and finally take this pain from society, because frankly said, it's in most areas the same, that public transport is working somehow, but we are not using technology to make it really smart and give people the opportunity to get rid of the cars, because in a lot of situations you still need a car because public transport is not really satisfying. And technology is there, we simply have to do it and finally work on such a thing. That would give me a good time.
So, Benny, save us from standing somewhere in the middle of nowhere having no internet, right? That is what smart cities can do for us. We have Wi-Fi everywhere. Hopefully?
Hopefully. I mean, let's go back to the question before. I mean, I would say yes, if we use and combine the collected data in the right way. This would be my answer to the question before, and I think there is a big chance, a big opportunity in doing that. And I mean, about the best example, I have to say chapeau to Tami, because Barcelona, for example, in my view, or from my point of view, is the smartest city. Let's call it the smartest city here in Europe.
So we have tomorrow the CTO of Barcelona here, so it will be very interesting. We like to welcome you tomorrow again, and I want to say thanks a lot to all of you. And before I hand over to my colleague Jera, I want to have a big applause for Claire, Robert, Tami, Stefan, and Benny. So much people here on stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.